In the previous clip, we have added the message dialog service mock object to the friend-edit-viewModel tests class. Now let's scroll down to the two test methods where we use the delete command. Let's focus on this one, should call delete friend when delete command is executed. Now before we execute the viewModel's delete command, we just set up our message dialog service mock. We want to set up the show yes no dialog method. For now we don't care about the title and the message, so we just use the itIsAny method, and we want to set up our show yes no dialog method for any strings. And if that method is called, we just return the message dialog result yes. Now I just copy this setup and I paste it here, and I change the setup method to verify. I want to verify that the show yes no dialog method has been called once. Alright, so we return yes from that show yes no dialog method, and then we expect that the delete friend method of the data provider has been called once. We also expect that the show yes no dialog method has been called once. Okay, now let's run the unit tests. And our test method is red. Now let's go to the friend-edit-viewModel and let's implement the logic. So here in the onDeleteExecute method, we can just use now our message dialog service, and we call the show yes no dialog method. We don't care about the title, but let's just write in delete friend and some message. Let's also store the result, but for now let's don't do anything with it. Now let's run the tests again. And as you can see, all the tests are green. Okay, I think we need to add another test method, because now we delete the friend independently from the result. So let's go back to the friend-edit-viewModel tests class. We need another test where we return the message dialog result no. In that case, the delete friend method should never be called. But instead of adding another test method, let's just parameterize this test method. So we need one parameter for the message dialog result. And we use that result here. Then we need another parameter to define the number of calls of the delete friend method. So let's add that parameter as well. I call it expected delete friend calls. Okay, and now I use the times exactly method, and I just pass in that parameter. Okay, let's add a line break here. Alright, here we go. Now instead of using the fact attribute on our test, we use the theory attribute. And now we can use the inline data attribute to specify the data. When the message dialog result is yes, we expect one call of the delete friend method. Now let's just copy this. When the message dialog result is no, we expect 0 calls of the delete friend method of the data provider. Alright, now let's run the tests again. And we have one red test method. So in this case, we expected the delete method to be called 0 times, but it was called once. Of course it was called once, because we don't use the result at all in our onDeleteExecute implementation. So now let's just check that result. So I add an if statement here. If the result is yes, then I call the data provider's delete friend method. Okay, now let's run the tests again. And you see, all the tests have passed. Cool! So we have implemented this logic. Now let's write one more test method around that friend deleted event. In the previous clip, we have tested and implemented that the delete friend method of the data provider is only called if the result of the dialog is yes. As we are good developers, we also only publish the friend deleted event if the dialog result has been yes. But what would happen if we forgot this? Let's just move that line outside of the if statement. Now let's run our unit tests. And you see, all the tests are still green. But I'm pretty sure that you agree that this is not good. We should not publish the friend deleted event with a friend ID if the message dialog result was not yes. So let's go back to the friend edit view model test class and let's scroll down to the last test method. Here we have a test method should publish friend deleted event when delete command is executed. But now we only want to publish that event if the dialog's result is yes. So let's also parameterize this test method. In fact, I can do a similar thing as in this test method that we have created in the previous clip. So let's just copy the parameters and let's add them to the other test method. And instead of expected delete friend calls, I call that parameter expected publish calls. Okay? I want to verify exactly this number. Alright. Now let's go up again. We also take the theory and the inline data, which is exactly the same. And we also grab the setup of our message dialog service. And we set it up before we execute the delete command. Then we also verify that the show yes no dialog method of our message dialog service has been called once. Okay, quite cool. Now let's run the tests again. And now we have one red test. And we are forced to move that logic to publish the friend deleted event into the if statement where the message dialog result has to be yes. Okay, now let's run the tests again. And all the tests are green. Now the next thing I want to test is that the show yes no dialog method is called with a correct message. Here I've opened the friend edit view model tests class and I have added a new test method that is called should display correct message in delete dialog. On the friend edit view model, I call the load method to load a friend. Then I set the first name of that loaded friend to Thomas and the last name to Huber. I execute the delete command and I verify that the show yes no dialog method of the message dialog service mock has been called exactly once. But as you can see, I use concrete parameters here. So I want to verify that this method has been called exactly with these parameters. The title should be delete friend and the message should be do you really want to delete the friend with first name and last name? So let's run our unit tests. And you see that new test method is red. Now to implement the logic in our view model, I can just copy this string to use it in the implementation. So let's open up the friend edit view model where we call the show yes no dialog method. The title should be delete friend with an uppercase F. And now the message is exactly the string that we have defined in our unit test. We don't have the F variable here. Instead, we just need to use the friend property of our friend edit view model that contains the friend wrapper. Okay, quite cool. Now let's run the unit tests. And as you can see, all the tests are green. Okay, cool. So now I think we are done with the display logic in the onDelete execute method. Now we need an implementation of our iMessage dialog service so that we can use it in the running friend storage application. And this is what we will do now. In the previous clips, we have implemented the iMessage dialog service interface. So we are done with this interface. We have used that interface in the friend-edit view model, and we have written unit tests to ensure that the logic in the friend-edit view model works. Now to run the application, we need to add an implementation of the iMessage dialog service interface. And this is what we will do now. We will create the message dialog service class that implements the iMessage dialog service interface and that shows a message box. Okay, so let's switch to Visual Studio. In the Dialogs folder of the Friend Storage application, we have the iMessage dialog service interface. Now let's add a class to that folder and let's just call it Message Dialog Service. Okay, let's make it public and we implement the iMessage dialog service interface. Okay, here we have the show yes no dialog method. Now in this method, we just display a message box with the message that we receive as parameter and also with the title. And we want to use the buttons yes and no. Now let's just check. If that show method returns yes, then we want to return from our show yes no dialog method the message dialog result yes. And in the other case, we want to return the message dialog result no. So we are done with the implementation of that message dialog service class that is using a message box. Before we run the application, we need to register that class in our dependency injection container. So let's open up our Bootstrapper class in the startup folder. Let's just register our new type by calling the register type method. Okay, we need a using directive for friend storage UI dialogs to use our message dialog service, and we want to register that service as an iMessage dialog service. So AutoFac will automatically inject that service into our friend edit view model, because that friend edit view model has an iMessage dialog service constructor parameter. Alright, now let's run the application. Let's open up a friend and let's try to delete that friend. Now you see the message box pops up and I can click no. And nothing happens like we have tested it. Let's click the delete button again and let's also look at the message. Do you really want to delete the friend Julia Huber? This is exactly how we have specified the message in our unit test. And now, of course, when I click yes, this friend will be deleted. Alright, quite cool. Now let me show you how easy it is to replace the message box with a custom dialog.